The next module is about the causality assessment of case reports of suspected adverse event. So like what I said before, we have the suspected adverse event first, and then we use certain methods to assess whether they have a causal relationship. This adverse effect has a causal relationship with a certain medication or the use of medication. So I will go quick for this thing. I will introduce to you some group of methods that are already discovered or invented by researchers in 70s or 80s, and then we still use them until now. So in clinical setting, yeah, any kind of adverse drug reaction or adverse drug event can be related to more than one drug or more than one condition, more than can possibly associated also with the use of the the diet of the patients and so on. So in reality, the particular event is either associated or it's not associated with a drug. But the current state of information almost never allows a definitive determination of this dichotomy because it depends on the milieu of each patient. Just like uh, this photo, actually the kid is smart, yeah, that works on this problem. So there are questions and answers that need to be linked, and uh, the students has the same line here, so it's still difficult to define which part of the left side has the connection to the right side. So there are a number of possible causes of causal factors, and it is not easy to uh, to find which one is probably the most yeah, which one is the culprit of the reactions that occur. So the event is either occurred independently, or in some ways it occurrence is partially or totally linked to one or more the potential causative agents. But it is really the task of pharmacoepidemiology to determine the degree to which the occurrence of the events is linked to one particular causal agent. Okay, so if we see this diagram, so the event occur here in the middle, right? And the right side of the event is the time for us to investigate, yeah, to which possible factors, the potential factors, the event is correlated. It can be only correlated to one factor. It can be more than one factor, just like in the case of drug-drug interactions or drug-disease interaction or drug interactions in general. So here, the potential causal factors can be diet, can be drugs, can be over-the-counter drugs that are bought by friends, family, or even the patients itself before uh, they are administered to the hospital. Then it can also disease, the first, and also comorbids, occupational exposure, and other factors. So in pharmacoepidemiology, uh, we are interested to find which of these factors, one or more than one factors, that can cause the event, that are related to the event, or there are nothing that are related to this, but the procedure and so on. So we can define that it is not adverse drug reaction, but only adverse events due to medication error and so on. Okay. So the causality assessment in chronic disease epidemiology usually used in population level, but in the causality assessment in individual ATR case report that we will talk about is sorry, the every single case report, yeah, can be assessed if so. It is based on individuals, individual patients, uh, whether it is has some certain degree of causation or not. So usually, the major challenge is that the data are incomplete, yeah, but of the details of exposure and sometimes of the nature of the event. For example, we usually do not have the baseline uh, clinical uh, laboratory data for the patients that already have the events, when the patients already have the event and then being administered to a hospital. So before the event occurs, we do not have the laboratory data. If we have, then it's okay, it's good, but most of them we don't have that. And also sometimes we, uh, depending on the state of the patients, just like in the case of life-threatening situations, we may not understand, we don't have any data about what substances that are already taken by the patients. For example, in the case of toxicity and so on. Yeah. So there are a lot of so the data that can be gathered to assess, to do this assessment, can be everywhere. It is just like a detective, Sherlock Holmes or Conan, if you want, to reveal the case, to solve the case. But it's not criminal case, but uh, the clinical case. So yeah, this is the frequent activity in post-marketing surveillance, and necessary to have coherent, consistent, and reliable method, and that's why we have to set up a system. And the system is incorporated or is being set up in a pharmacovigilance system. So common attributes of a single report as obstacles. So this is usually we found single reports as like this, that the reporter with the suspect that the event is merely drug induced. So we, by using this, uh, because of the situation, then sometimes we ignore the other possibilities that the event probably not only drug induced, but can be caused by other activities. And usually the patient's drug exposure are incomplete. Yeah, and usually the incomplete data on the adverse event due to retrospective suspicion. I mean, after the event occurs, then we suspect some previous exposures. Yeah, and it is logical, but before this exposure, so we do not have the data. So it is difficult, and that's why it is difficult. And also data on concomitant diseases and other confounding, such as diet and habits, are typically not available. So adverse reactions are various in type, acute, subacute, chronic, reversible or not, they are common, and yeah. So yeah, so this is only the short history of the development of the causal relationship between adverse event and drugs. So there are two disciplines involved, the epidemiology and the study of individual case reports of adverse reactions. So in 1950s, there are two epidemiologists, Yerusalmi and Palmer. So they developed a set of criteria. I'll present the criteria after this. And it is based on Bradford Hill causality criteria. So the Sir Bradford Hill, famous for his causation criteria. Just Google it to find Sir Bradford Hill. And the second one is the postulates by Koch and Henle for establishing causation of for infectious diseases. So they developed this and they have these criteria, 5 criteria. The first is consistency and the strength of the association, specificity of the association, and then the temporal relationship, meaning that the exposure should be pre happen before the effect, yeah, and then the coherence or biological plausibility of the associations. The more the effect and specific medication has uh, completed this criteria, the more the criteria that are completed, then the stronger the associations. And but it is not only these Yerushalmi and Palmer's criteria, but some experts then try to develop some methods to associate the, you know, to associate any event, to develop methods, yeah, to associate any event with certain or particular drugs. For example, iris and also cars and lasagna. So they develop these methods, yeah, using global introspections of the events and try to find this. So they have this basis for assessment, the timing, the presence of observable factors, and so on and so on. And this is important to find this de-challenge and re-challenge. And it is used for many methods that are developed afterwards. De-challenge and re-challenge are de-challenge meaning stopping the administration of the drug. When we suspect a drug uh, that may cause uh, adverse reaction, then we stop the drug to be taken by the patient. For example, if we suspect that chloroquine may cause, for example, seizures in patients due to COVID-19, then because the seizures already appear and we suspect that it is caused by the chloroquine, then we stop it. It is called as de-challenge, so withdrawal of the drugs. But then in under you know, under kind of very special circumstance, if it's permitted, yeah, if it's applicable ethically, then we can do the re-challenge. It means that we reintroduce the drug to the patients. to, but then we have to monitor closely if the reaction occurs. If the reaction occurs, then we have to stop it directly, and then it is called as a challenge. Okay. And I want to show you, and there are also a lot of more methods. I want to show you what is called as Kramer's method. So Kramer developed a method. It is an algorithm method, and it has six axes based on what information that will be gathered from this axis from the patients. So there are every axis has its own equations, and usually and then the researcher or the assessor may gather the informations based on these clues. For using for the first axis, for example, the previous experience with drug, the examiner will look for literature or labeling information of the drugs. For example, the fifth axis, the T challenge, there are a lot of equations, and usually the examiner will use to try to find or note the all aspects of timing of the challenge and the result. So it is complete, but it is very it is complete, but because it is complete, then it needs a lot of questions to be answered. The axis is just like this, for example. So we have the first axis. The In the first axis there are four questions. Four questions. Is the first question: is the CM widely known and universally accepted? This is if yes, and then we go to the second question. If no or don't know, we go to the third question, and so on. And we have the score here, and it is validated, I think. So we go to the axis 2 and so on. So this is a beautiful algorithm by Grammars, but it's not. Uh, it is very detailed, and to my knowledge, it is not frequently used at the moment. So if you want to know, then like what I said before, that there are a lot of researchers too that are very, you know, that want to establish the best methods to find the causation relationship, establish the causal relationship between adverse event drug, and the research is going from 80s to even to 90s. But because there are a lot of methods, then uh, many of the researchers do not, uh, because already many methods already are available, then they are not trying to pursue uh, more methods. So yeah, I want to present you of the yeah some of the methods, some groups of methods. So we have wait so we have four basic approaches, four groups of methods. The first is the unstructured clinical judgment or global introspection. So this clinical judgment depends on the experts in the field. So because more likely to be based on empirical uh, evidence. So because it has the experts have uh, prior uh, experience in this area of associations, and also the global introspections, just like using the WHO methods. Global introspections mean you do not have to feel the algorithm and so on. You just look whether this is exists or not, and so on and so on and so on, and then you can classify the associations to a certain level. And the second and the third groups are similar, quite similar. They are algorithms method, but the first group is with verbal judgment, and the third using scoring. And usually we use the scoring this one because it is easy and it's more likely to be objective. And then the fourth group is using the probabilistic approach, and this is usually uh, with the help of computer technology. So this is the most common approach, but does not work well. The unstructured clinical judgment of global introspections. So global introspection is uncalibrated. Yeah, there are. Uh, this is the most common example for this uh, group of assessment method. So the WUMC, the Uppsala Monitoring Center, developed the causality categories. There are six level categories, six level. So the first is certain. This is the strongest association, and then the second one is probable, likely, possible, unlikely, conditional, and unaccessible. So we can classify an event and a drug, the relationship between an event and a drug, to certain if they fulfill these criteria. So the first, for example, if an event or laboratory test abnormality with possible time relation to drug intake. So we have to have this, and then cannot be explained by disease or other drugs. And then response to withdrawal plausible, yeah, and even definitive pharmacologically, and re-challenge, yeah, if necessary. It is unethical if we jeopardize the patient conditions just to know or to gather the re-challenge data. So yeah, if it's possible, then we can do the re-challenge. But if we do not do re-challenge, we may, uh, you know, we may consider that it is not, we may not classify it as a certain, but probable. And then the algorithm method, yeah, this is the common basic structure, usually follow the cards and lasagna, and also IRI methods, using yes no answer and using don't know. So this is, I want to introduce the third group of methods. Uh, this is the algorithm by Naranjo, because it is used in the yellow card in the UK, and in Indonesia we use this as well in our yellow card system. So in short, yeah, in short, this is the uh, algorithm by Naranjo. So the questions, actually some there are longer form of the questions, but here just the short one. This is not the original one. Previous report, yes or no, or unknown. If you answer yes, then you put the score +1 here. even after drug, yes or no. If yes, then plus 2 here. If no, minus 1, and so on and so on and so on. And you need to provide you calculate the total score, tally the score, and then you so this is the long version, and then you have the wait. Oh, there is no the conclusion. Wait. mm, there should be somewhere in the internet. Please find it. Please find it. And the higher the number of the higher the score, then the stronger the association, yeah, between the event and the drug. Okay, so this is the, like what I said before, this is the short version, and this is the longer version, just like the previous reports. And then question tag, this one is actually the original one, is the other previous conclusive reports on this reaction. And the last one is the last group is the probabilistic methods, and they use the Bayesian approach. I'm not really understand about this, but this is now becoming popular. And then the future, yeah, many unresolved issues, both methodological and practical. And individuals and students have adopted one or more methods and have committed to their use. So it is very difficult to have international harmonization for the methods that can become the gold standard to define the associations. So the possible is using the Bayesian method, but it's not rapidly embraced. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think it is. I will stop my presentation here. Is there any questions so far? No? No? Hello? Okay, thank you, Kiara. Okay, if there is no question, then I will stop my presentations and have a nice weekend. We will meet next week. May I know when will be your final exam period? May I know? Let me stop the recording first.